Piper was a bright and cheerful girl who happened to be blind. She always showed kindness to those around her, but unfortunately, her classmates responded with nothing but disdain. No one wanted to befriend a blind girl, and their words and actions often carried a cruel, mocking tone. Her older brother Andy, a boy with curly hair, was her closest companion. They were half-siblings, sharing the same father but different mothers, yet their bond was incredibly strong. They treated each other more like best friends than just siblings. One day, after returning home, Andy was busy fixing a broken side mirror on their car when suddenly a scream pierced the air from upstairs. Their father had collapsed in the bathroom and appeared to have stopped breathing. By the time the ambulance arrived, the siblings had lost the only family they had left. According to local law, minors under the age of 18 were not allowed to live independently. They had to be placed in foster care with other families. The community officer in charge of placements, Wendy, informed Andy and Piper that a woman named Laura, who lived alone, was willing to take them in. Andy was reluctant to leave the familiarity of their home and move into a stranger's house. But when he made it clear that this was mandatory. However, she also explained that in just 3 months, Andy would turn 18, and then he could legally become Piper's guardian and take her away. With no other choice, Andy and Piper packed up and left the only home they had ever known. They set out to live with Laura. The sun was shining brightly that day. The roads were clear, a seeming sign that things would go smoothly. Little did the siblings know, what awaited them at their new home would lead them into a nightmare from which there was no escape. When Andy and Piper finally stepped into Laura's house, she greeted them with an overwhelming flood of welcoming words. Her excessive enthusiasm felt unsettling, but the siblings, feeling like strangers in a strange land, kept their reservations to themselves. Laura pulled out her phone and snapped a selfie with them, showering Piper with compliments about her beauty. Andy's keen eyes caught something off. He noticed that in the photo, he was deliberately blocked out. It was obvious Laura was doing this on purpose. Either she had some serious issue or a hidden agenda. Suddenly, Andy felt something strange underfoot. Looking down, he saw tactile paving, those special markers designed for the visually impaired. He asked if they were meant for Piper. Laura responded that her own daughter, Kathy, had been blind too, but tragically died in an accident. The comment made Andy uneasy. Piper pressed for details about how Kathy died. Laura's face grew sorrowful as she explained that Kathy drowned. Though it saddened her every time she thought about it, she insisted those days were behind them. During their conversation, the community officer, Wendy, called to check on how the siblings were settling in. Taking advantage of the quiet moment, Andy decided to take Piper to check out the backyard. The area looked neglected and messy, with an old chicken coop adding to the eerie atmosphere. What caught their attention was a small boy standing in the dried-up pool, gently holding a cat. Suddenly, Laura rushed over, shouting and snatching the cat from the boy's arms. From her scolding, they learned the boy's name was Oliver. He slowly turned to look at Andy with a blank, mysterious expression that was hard to read. Andy found it difficult to describe the boy's presence, and Piper felt a growing curiosity about Oliver. Later, after Laura's explanation, the siblings discovered that Oliver was also a child she had taken in. Perhaps overwhelmed by the loss of his own family, Oliver had been quiet and withdrawn ever since he arrived. That night, unable to sleep, Andy was awakened by strange noises. He got up and peeked out from the attic, only to see Laura leading Oliver towards the backyard shed. This suspicious action deepened Andy's doubts. Reflecting on the odd things they had noticed earlier that day, he couldn't shake the feeling that Laura's house was hiding some dark secrets. The next morning, Andy woke up to find he had wet the bed. Overwhelmed by a sudden wave of shame, he scrambled to clean the soiled sheets and clothes. He couldn't understand why. At his age, this was still happening to him. That afternoon, Andy and Piper attended their father's funeral. Everyone at the ceremony wore black mourning clothes, except for Laura, who stood out in her brightly colored sweater. After the mourners said their goodbyes to the body, Laura quietly approached the coffin and secretly snipped off a lock of hair. Having completed this strange ritual, Laura called Andy back to her room. She told him that the deceased didn't immediately leave their bodies, and their souls lingered for a while. According to local custom, Andy needed to kiss his father's lips to say a proper farewell. Andy found this tradition absurd and had never heard of anything like it. When he hesitated and refused to comply, Laura bent down and kissed his father herself, taking the gesture on his behalf. Meanwhile, a loud banging suddenly echoed through Laura's house, as if something was trying to break through a barrier. Strange Oliver, ignoring any pain, made his way to the backyard and began furiously pounding on the door of the shed. Realizing he couldn't open it, his gaze shifted toward the nearby chicken coop. It was clear that Oliver's mind was not quite right. His hunger drove him to consider eating the chickens raw. At the same time, Laura took the two siblings away from the funeral. She suggested that since the dead couldn't come back to life, everyone should try to be happy. The two underage kids didn't fully understand, but their suppressed emotions longed for some release. That evening, Laura threw a party. The three of them danced excitedly, caught up in the moment. Hours later, a drunken piper fell into a deep sleep on the couch. Meanwhile, Laura and Andy opened up to each other. Laura revealed she used to be a psychological counselor, but admitted she couldn't ease the pain of losing loved ones, even for herself. Under the deep veil of night, Andy and Laura sat side by side, sharing their secrets. Andy spoke about how much he missed his father and asked Laura how she had come to terms with losing her daughter, Kathy. Laura's expression grew heavy as she admitted she never truly let go of her daughter's death. She even revealed that there was a time when she stayed at Kathy's gravesite for days without returning home. Moved by Laura's confession, Andy opened up about his own struggles. He revealed that his relationship with his father had always been strained. After his father remarried and built a new family, Andy felt he had lost his place at home. To keep it hidden from Piper, their father would beat Andy in the bathroom, a truth Andy never shared with his sister. Later that night, Andy fell into a deep drunken sleep, completely unresponsive even when Laura called him. Moments later, Laura returned carrying a cup of urine and poured it over Andy's pants. Then she unlocked his phone and deleted some photos from his gallery. It was clear that Andy's bedwetting was actually a cruel prank orchestrated by Laura. But why would she do such a thing? What was her true motive behind this disturbing act? Early the next morning, Andy woke up only to find that he had wet the bed again. Confused and frustrated, he quickly grabbed his soiled clothes and headed to the bathroom to clean up. However, Laura suddenly blocked his way, completely disregarding that Piper was right there. She bluntly questioned Andy about why he kept wetting himself, leaving him feeling utterly humiliated. Overwhelmed, Andy fled the bathroom as fast as he could. Seeing this, Laura turned to Piper and confided that Andy's mental state was unstable and that he had seemed very agitated the night before. A few minutes later, Laura took Piper out shopping, leaving only Andy and Oliver alone at the house. Andy had planned to wash up in the bathroom, but the haunting image of his father's final moments made him hesitate. Instead, he went to the backyard hoping to find another room. Unfortunately, the only storage shed was locked tight, leaving him no choice but to turn on the garden tap. The sudden noise startled Andy, who was taking a shower. At first, he thought Oliver upstairs was just trying to get his attention. Andy then asked if Oliver was hungry, but the boy remained silent and expressionless. Wanting to build some connection, Andy grabbed a slice of watermelon from the fridge to share. Noticing Oliver's right hand moving as if drawing something, Andy quickly thought to try communicating through writing. This approach surprisingly worked. Oliver seemed to understand. However, as Andy handed the sliced fruit to Oliver, the boy's behavior suddenly turned alarming. Oliver clumsily and roughly grabbed the fruit knife and shockingly tried to swallow it. Terrified, Andy rushed forward to snatch the knife away, but Oliver fiercely resisted. It took every ounce of Andy's strength to finally pull the knife free and drag Oliver outside. Instinctively, Andy wanted to take Oliver to the hospital. Yet Oliver resisted fiercely, seemingly terrified of the white tape lines marked on the ground. Oliver lay on the ground, screaming hoarsely, his belly strangely pulsing every now and then. The horrifying sight sent chills down Andy's spine. Then, for the first time, Oliver cried out for help. Just at that moment, Laura returned, panic written all over her face. She anxiously demanded to know what had happened at the house and why Oliver was lying outside. Back in his room, Andy felt lost and overwhelmed with guilt, blaming himself for the tragedy. In a daze, he noticed a crumpled note Oliver had written. It awkwardly spelled out the word help. Suddenly, a shocking theory struck Andy's mind. Could Oliver be the boy Laura was actually imprisoning? Meanwhile, Oliver, now carried back inside, wore a face full of terror. But instead of comforting him, Laura hurriedly played a videotape. The footage showed a sinister ritual, an ancient ceremony known as borrowing a corpse to restore soul. Only now did the chilling truth begin to surface. Laura, desperate to bring back her deceased daughter, had sealed a demon inside Oliver's body through this ritual. This demon granted Oliver the ability to absorb memories and voices from anyone whose flesh he consumed. Yet, it was clear Oliver was not yet fully possessed by Kathy. Some steps of the ritual still remained unfinished. After watching the tape solution, Laura traced a circle on Oliver's forehead, and just like that, he slipped back into his previous vacant state, as if nothing had happened. It became clear that drawing the circle was a way to control his mind. This explained why Oliver never dared to cross the white line. It wasn't just a random mark, but a boundary circling the entire house. Then, Laura placed a strand of hair into Oliver's mouth, testing whether he had truly returned to normal. Hours later, heavy rain poured down outside. Meanwhile, Piper lay in her room, typing on her phone, seemingly pouring her heart out to a fellow blind friend. After a while, Piper went to find Laura, only to find her watching old videos of Kathy's life. They sat together watching the footage, with Laura narrating stories from the past, while Piper quietly listened in her arms. In that moment, they resembled a mother and daughter, with Laura showing a gentle maternal side. Yet, the images on screen raised questions. Kathy hadn't been blind while alive. So why did Laura lie? And why had she installed blind path markers throughout the house? At the same time, while Andy was washing the blood off in the bathroom, he suddenly felt the door creak open. Turning around toward the sound, he was shocked to see the ghostly figure of his deceased father standing there, murmuring, "He will die in the rain." The sudden apparition caused Andy to lose his footing, and he fell hard to the floor, slipping into unconsciousness. When Andy woke up, he found himself lying in a hospital bed. Laura comforted him, explaining that he had slipped in the shower and was diagnosed with a mild concussion. But Andy was visibly anxious. He insisted that Piper must not be allowed outside, recalling the warning his father had whispered during that moment, that his sister would die in the rain. Laura dismissed his fears as irrational, saying he was merely connecting his father's death with the rainy weather. However, once back home, Laura broke her promise and even took Piper out to play despite the heavy downpour. Soaked by the pouring rain, the two still seemed to enjoy themselves. Next, Laura helped Piper change into Kathy's clothes, claiming it was her daughter's favorite style when she was alive. Then, Laura shifted the conversation and said that if Piper wanted, she could call her mom. Piper politely neither accepted nor rejected the offer. Looking at Piper, who was about the same age as her own daughter, Laura was filled with bittersweet emotions. She asked Piper whether she planned to stay after 3 months or leave with Andy. Piper hesitated for a moment before saying she would come visit on weekends. Laura's expression darkened instantly. She realized she had no real chance of keeping Piper with her. At that moment, Laura suggested showing Piper something else. Following her directions, Piper came to a freezer and felt around inside. When Piper asked what was inside, Laura casually replied, "Just a chunk of frozen meat." But as the camera slowly pulled back, the chilling truth was revealed. The freezer held Kathy's corpse. That night, Laura brought Andy, who was thankfully unharmed, back home. When he saw his sister peacefully asleep in her bedroom, the weight on his heart finally lifted. Late into the night, Laura sat under dim lighting, meticulously drawing circles on Oliver's head while intently watching a video recording. From what was shown in the footage, the ritual known as borrowing a corpse's soul consisted of 3 main steps. The first step involved capturing a demon and hiding it inside a human host. The second step required that host to consume the flesh of the person they wished to resurrect. The third step was to feed the demon-chewed meat to another person. This act transferred the memories of the deceased to the one who consumed the flesh. It was clear that Laura intended for Oliver to eat Kathy's flesh first, then feed Kathy's meat to Piper. In this way, Kathy could be resurrected, at least in some form. The next morning, Laura quietly approached Piper and suddenly punched her hard before running off. This baffling action left everyone confused, but the truth soon surfaced. When Andy woke up, he found his sister bruised and immediately asked who had hurt her. Laura turned the question back on Andy, accusing, "Wasn't it you?" Andy looked completely innocent, denying any involvement. Piper said she didn't know who had hit her, but did notice her brother's scent lingering nearby. This left Andy speechless, unsure how to respond. Seizing the moment, Laura suddenly exposed Andy's secret, revealing that their father had abused Andy, which caused him to displace his anger onto Piper. Andy was stunned by Laura's sudden change in demeanor. Amid their heated argument, Andy noticed Oliver standing outside in the rain, staring intently at them. Andy, already suspicious of Oliver's true identity, tried to take a photo as evidence. Laura rushed over to stop him, making it clear she would never allow any photos to be taken. That punch seemed to restore some normalcy to the scene, but it also confirmed Andy's violent tendencies. Laura skillfully positioned herself as the victim, gaining Piper's trust and naturally winning her over. At this point, Andy wanted to take his sister away from the house, but Piper's heart was already captured by Laura. Feeling helpless, Andy stormed out of the room and drove away alone. Andy was smart. He had already sensed that Piper was trapped in a scheme and that Laura and Oliver were hiding something suspicious. While waiting for a meeting with the community sheriff, Andy noticed a wall plastered with missing person posters. One of them caught his attention, a boy named Bird who looked strikingly similar to Oliver. This chilling discovery revealed the tip of Laura's sinister plan. She had indeed been unlawfully imprisoning Oliver. Meanwhile, Laura took Piper to a sports center for the blind, telling her it was a place to relax and clear her mind. Piper didn't quite understand the meaning behind it, but decided to follow Laura's instructions anyway. Meanwhile, Andy arrived at the sheriff's office and barely had a chance to explain the situation when Wendy interrupted, saying that Laura had already called. She accused Andy of not only assaulting his sister Piper, but also physically attacking Laura herself. These false accusations ignited a storm of anger and helplessness in Andy, emotions he couldn't contain. Desperate, Andy shared his discovery with Wendy. He explained that Laura had adopted a boy named Oliver, but this Oliver looked exactly like the missing boy Bird. Wendy was shocked. She knew Laura hadn't taken in anyone else besides the two siblings. Moreover, Andy's detailed description didn't sound like a lie. Wanted to verify the truth, Wendy decided to take Andy to Laura's house to investigate further. Back at Laura's home, she felt a sudden chill as she stepped inside. The place was in utter chaos, a clear sign that Oliver had once again lost control. Following the sounds deeper into the house, she saw Oliver wildly destroying everything in sight. Laura tried to reason with him, telling him it wasn't the right time, but Oliver suddenly lunged at her, biting deeply in her arm and tearing off a chunk of flesh with ease. With no other choice, Laura retreated to her room, and the intense pain quickly caused her to lose consciousness. Starving and uncontrollable, Oliver began biting everything in sight. Even the furniture wasn't spared. After a brief blackout, Laura woke up and, dragging her bleeding arm, searched for Oliver. She found him standing outside, lost in a daze. As Laura drew more circles on his forehead, the control over Oliver tightened once again. They then went out to the backyard warehouse, where Laura had already made the chilling decision to have Oliver gnaw on her own daughter. It became clear that Laura's act of sending Piper away was a calculated move to tame and guide Oliver through the ritual steps. This revealed that the possession ritual had a very short window of time, and the caster had to complete it within that specific period. Meanwhile, Andy's private thoughts had been overheard by Laura, confirming that everything was unfolding exactly as she planned. After ending the call, Laura began cleaning up the scene, desperate to restore normalcy before Wendy arrived. In the blink of an eye, Wendy knocked on Laura's door. By then, the chaos in the house had been neatly restored. Laura led Wendy on a tour of the siblings' rooms, which appeared perfectly orderly, as if nothing had happened. Meanwhile, Andy, hiding in his car, refused to wait idly. He climbed over the fence into Laura's backyard. Knowing that aside from the warehouse, he hadn't explored the rest of the house, and he suspected the warehouse might hold some dark secret. When Andy smashed open the warehouse door and rushed inside, what he saw chilled him to the bone. Oliver was there, viciously gnawing on a corpse. The moment Oliver looked up sent a shock of terror straight through Andy. On the other side, Wendy finished her inspection without noticing anything unusual. But just as she was about to leave, Laura accidentally revealed a bloodied arm. Outside, Andy was shouting to warn Wendy, and the carefully maintained facade finally cracked. It was clear Laura had completely lost herself. Her grief for her daughter had morphed into madness. Ignoring Laura's desperate pleas, Wendy broke free and ran down the stairs, with Andy following her to the warehouse. The horrifying sight convinced Wendy beyond doubt of the dark truth. She quickly urged Andy to retreat, but unfortunately, it was already too late. Wendy died on the spot, and Andy was left battered and barely breathing. In a cruel attempt to ensure her ritual proceeded without interruption, Laura mercilessly killed Andy. Only after Andy stopped moving completely did she slowly release her grip. Once everything was done, Laura went to the gymnasium to pick up Piper. They were about to carry out the final step, having Oliver feed Piper the pieces of flesh. Back at the house, Piper noticed a strong metallic scent of blood, though she couldn't see what was happening around her. In a daze, she heard her brother calling her name and followed the voice. It turned out that Oliver, having fed on Andy, was mimicking his voice to lure Piper. When Piper reached out to touch the figure, she felt a bald head, clearly not her brother Andy. At that moment, Laura stepped in and stopped her, telling Piper that Andy wasn't there. When Piper asked who she was touching, Laura answered coldly, "It was Oliver." Laura's answer sent a chill through Piper. Her lies were crumbling under the weight of the truth. After returning home, strange things began to happen. Piper suddenly broke free from her restraints and hurried into the nearby bathroom. There, she stumbled upon something unexpected, her brother Andy's braces. The realization that something terrible might have happened to him overwhelmed her, and she broke down in tears. At that moment, Laura used a key to unlock the bathroom door and confronted Piper with the harsh truth. Despite Piper's desperate struggles, she couldn't escape Laura's grasp. As Piper slipped into unconsciousness, Laura showed no hint of sympathy. She dragged Piper outside, where Oliver was waiting patiently. Oliver's swollen belly indicated he had consumed part of Kathy's corpse. The final step of the ritual was brutally cruel. It wasn't just about feeding Piper. She had to die in the same way Kathy did. Only by drowning, just like Kathy, could her soul fully transfer into a new body. Soon, Piper was jolted awake by the suffocating sensation. She struggled and screamed desperately, trying to make Laura stop. Then, a single word, "Mom," seemed to awaken the maternal side of Laura. That simple word halted her actions completely. In that moment, Laura seemed to hear the voice of her daughter Kathy once more, and slowly, she released Piper. Seizing the brief opportunity, Piper bolted out of the yard and ran all the way until she flagged down a passing car by the roadside. Piper was rescued, and Laura's sinister plan was foiled. Meanwhile, Oliver, who had been chasing after her, stopped in his tracks. He still dared not cross the white line before him. As he noticed the missing person posters scattered on the ground, a flicker of recognition stirred within him, a memory of his true identity. When the police arrived after receiving the call, brave Oliver finally took that crucial step forward. He told the officers his name was Bird and asked for their help. In the story's final moments, Laura chose to drown alongside her daughter Kathy. Perhaps this was the ending she truly desired, a form of release and peace at last.